Hi, and welcome to a brand new podcast about all things aviation. This is Cessnas To Concordes, and I'm your host, Kieran, and today we are going to be talking about the Concorde, why it failed, and what the future of supersonic airliners could look like. The Concorde is the most famous supersonic airliner. It could make it from London to New York in just 2 hours and 56 minutes compared to 7 hours on a 747 or similar. It first flew on March 2nd, 1969. To put that into perspective, the Boeing 747, which we think of as an old plane now, did not fly till December of 1969. It had such a futuristic design, it looked like it was released in 2009 and not 1969. Its first commercial flights were on January 21st, 1976, with Air France operating a flight from Paris to Rio de Janeiro, and British Airways operating a flight from London to Bahrain. It was the only supersonic airliner, with its only competitor, the Tu-144, was only used for 7 months before being taken from service, besides a few scientific flights in the 90s by NASA, and Boeing's concept of a supersonic airliner was never built. The Concorde was operated by British Airways, Air France, Singapore Airlines, and the little-known U.S. airline Braniff. An Air France Concorde was painted a Pepsi blue livery, which had a fatal flaw. The blue paint caused it to only be able to fly at Mach 2 for 20 minutes at the most, due to heat issues. I was able to go to the Museum of Flight in Seattle, Washington, where you are able to get very close to a Concorde registration Golf Bravo Oscar Alpha Golf, which is a later Concorde, the third to last Concorde produced, second to last produced in England. The Concorde, despite being only less than 30 feet shorter than the 747-100, holds around a third of the passengers at 128 maximum compared to 366 by the 747-100. It wasn't a wide body like most long-range aircraft, with only 2 seats on either side. Even the tiny 737-700 of today has 3 on either side. It was incredibly tight inside, with my camera bumping on the plexiglass over the seat when I got to go inside one at the Seattle Museum of Flight in 2024. The plane was very high off the ground compared to other planes, high enough a very tall person could easily walk under it without bumping their head. The Concorde also had a unique nose design where it would droop down so pilots could see the ground in front of them easier. Overall, the Concorde is loved by many and was used by a number of airlines, so why did it fail? On July 25th, 2000, Air France Flight 4590, which was being operated by Foxtrot Bravo Tango Sierra Charlie that day, hit debris on the runway, causing the tire to explode, with 3 tire fragments up, damaging the landing gear, which prevented it from retracting, and also rupturing the fuel tank on the wing, which caused it to ignite, causing engines 1 and 2 to stop working. The plane made it off the runway but lost control and crashed into a hotel, killing 113 people and injuring 6 more. The debris was a titanium strip from a Continental, now United Airlines, DC-10 that had taken off shortly before. This caused the entire Concorde fleet of all airlines to be grounded. After some modifications, they returned to service for 2 more years before being retired in 2003. This, along with the September 11th attacks and numerous other factors we will talk about in a moment, caused the Concorde to be retired. The Concorde was also extremely loud, both from sonic booms and the engines themselves, especially with the afterburners. It was 10 decibels louder than a 707 taking off, or similar to an F-18 Super Hornet. I heard a CF-18 Hornet, which is the Canadian version of the quieter FA-18 Hornet, fly over at an air show one time. It was loud enough that despite holding a heavy camera and food, I still tried to cover my ears, and that was at a few thousand feet. The Concorde also used a lot of fuel, over 6,000 gallons on a regular flight, which made it unprofitable to airlines. The Concorde could also not go over Mach 1 in populated areas due to the shockwave breaking windows. All these issues led to the Concorde taking its last commercial flight from New York to London on October 24th, 2003, and his last flight from London Heathrow to the now closed Bristol Filton Airport on November 26th, 2003. Ever since its retirement, there have not been any supersonic airliners or even any sort of private jet that reaches supersonic speeds. Besides military, there have not been any supersonic planes since the Concorde retired. And even before, there has only been one, the Tu-144 I talked about earlier. The Concorde's final flight marked the end of an era, but it was far from the end of the story. A new chapter was just beginning, one filled with promise of a newer, safer, and better supersonic travel solution. Boom Supersonic is a brand new company dedicated to supersonic air travel. Their first prototype, the XB-1, took flight in March of this year, 2024, for those watching far in the future. This plane is an early test for the Boom Overture, which will be a supersonic long-range jet like the Concorde. United, American Airlines, and Japan Airlines have already ordered Overtures. The Overture is expected to fly in 2026 and enter service in 2030, marking the return of supersonic air travel. It has a top speed of Mach 1.7, Mach 0.3 slower than the Concorde, but still nearly double the speed of most airliners flying today. It can only carry 80 passengers, which is similar to the Embraer E175 long-range regional jet. But the Overture is not the only one. Texas-based startup Venus Aerospace is working on a hypersonic jet that can reach speed upwards of Mach 9 at the edge of space, and it will also be completely zero emission. But with only 12 passengers, it is not very practical. A Chinese company called Space Transportation has a similar concept, in theory connecting Beijing and New York in just 1 hour. Both of those are startups with no successful planes thus far. But Lockheed Martin, a very established brand including in the supersonic plane market, has a concept of their own that cuts down on the sonic booms, allowing for it to be flown over cities. They even have a flying plane that already uses the tech, the X-59 Quest, spelled with 2 S's. They're designing a concept using this tech that can fly at Mach 1.7 and hold 40 passengers. But will supersonic travel be popular again in the near future? Only time will tell. Thank you all for listening. This is the very first episode of this podcast, hosted and produced by me, Kieran, and I will see you all in the next one.